Hey guys, this is Jeff Stanek with Figured Out Baseball. Got a great Figured Out Baseball podcast today that I'm very, very excited for. We're being joined today by Andy Stankiewicz, who's currently the head coach at Grand Canyon University, Division I school in Arizona in the Western Athletic Conference. He is also a former major leaguer, which is just a cool combination, just the things that he's done. I'd love to give you his background here before we jump into questions with him so you know a little bit more about Coach Stankiewicz. He is a Cerritos, California native, and we've had several Cerritos, California natives on the program before, which also is kind of a cool thing we might get into later. In high school, he was a 26th-round draft pick by the Royals out of St. Paul High School in Santa Fe Springs, California, but he turned that down to go play collegiately at Pepperdine University, Division I school in Malibu, California. He was drafted as a junior in the 18th round by the Tigers, decided to come back for his senior year where he graduated in 1986. He was drafted as a senior in the 12th round by the Yankees. He made his major league debut in April of 1992. He ended up playing middle infield in the major leagues for the Yankees in 1992 and 93. Played for the Astros in 1994 and 95. Played for the Expos in 1996 and 97. Played for the Diamondbacks in 1998 before calling it a career. In 2004 and 2005, he got into coaching for the first time at least at this high of a level. He managed the Staten Island Yankees, the single-A affiliate for the Yankees in those couple of seasons. In 2006, he spent 1 year working as a scout for the Yankees. The spring of 2007, he took his first dive into collegiate baseball. From 2007 until 2009, he was an assistant coach at Arizona State University. In those 3 years that he was there, the team advanced to the College World Series twice. He coached 29 major league draft picks in those 3 seasons, including 3 first-rounders. In the fall of 2009, he joined the Seattle Mariners to be a minor league field coordinator. He was there until 2011. In the summer of 2011, he accepted the head coaching job at Grand Canyon. 2012 was his first year coaching as the head coach at Grand Canyon University. At that time, the team was a Division II team. In 2013, his second year there, the team won 40 games, went to the Division II World Series. Then in 2015, only their second year after transitioning to Division I, Grand Canyon won the Western Athletic Conference regular season title, which is a pretty amazing feat, only the second year of being Division I. His teams have won the Western Athletic Conference regular season title 3 times since transitioning to Division I. In 2013, 17, and 18, Coach Stankiewicz was named Conference Coach of the Year. He's had 17 players drafted since taking over at Grand Canyon. He's also spent several summers coaching for USA Baseball's collegiate national team and 2 seasons managing the 18U Team USA team. It's unbelievable background, a great resume. Coach Stankiewicz, are so thankful for you being on the podcast with us today.
Jeff, happy to be on. Thanks for having me.
I like to usually start with something from the bio that stands out, and for you there are a lot of different places that I feel like we could get into this, but I'd actually like to ask you first, just as a guy that was listed as a major leaguer at 5'9", 165, you obviously had some very intriguing tools to be drafted 3 times, and that's something I think you hear a lot about on social media right now. Just in today's game, that you've got to be as big, strong, and fast as possible. Now, for you, I'm kind of curious. I'm actually maybe going to ask a different question you maybe would have expected. But with, I know you stole a lot of bases in college. You stole a good number of bases in the major leagues. I'm kind of curious, when you were drafted by the Royals out of high school, that was the time, if I'm not mistaken, when they were drafting guys that could really, really run, almost trying to put like track athletes on the field. They thought they could really win that way in the 80s. Was that something that the Royals talked to you about, if you recall that? Did they talk to you just about how they thought your skill set really fit their organization well at that time? And if they did, was it intriguing for you to potentially sign out of high school?
Yeah, that is an interesting question. That's the first time I've probably ever gotten it, Jeff, so congrats to you. I was fast. That was probably if you kind of like the whole tool set for ball players, that's the one thing that I could do, is I could run. And so I just remember going to a workout at a high school. They invited me to a workout. We all ran, and I think I put together a couple pretty good times, around the 60, all that stuff. And so, didn't really hear much. They got drafted, but it wasn't really that big of a temptation, quite honestly, Jeff. I think if you've been to Pepperdine, you've maybe seen that campus and saw that environment a little bit. And I was a late round draft pick out of high school, and I was smart enough to understand that getting drafted in the 26th round that's going to be difficult and chore in front of me. And mom and dad always raised me about education is important. Dad was a police officer, mom was a teacher. Hey man, education is important. Get that done, and then see where baseball can take you. And so, it was an honor, certainly to get drafted out of high school. But I honestly didn't really consider it too heavily when it happened. I was very, very appreciative and thanked him. But I said, hey man, I'm going to go to college.
Now, then you obviously went to college, you got drafted as a junior, came back for your senior year, and you kept getting drafted higher, which is obviously says a lot about just the fact that you continued to get better in your development. Now, as a college coach, is that an easier conversation for you to have with players if you have the situation where, a guy gets drafted out of high school, but he's committed to come into your place, and he's not obviously a top 5 rounder, but if a guy would get drafted later in high school, he's committed to come to your place, or if a guy gets drafted as a junior, kind of same as you in somewhere in the teens, not a super high round, is it an easier conversation for you to have because you went through that? Do you feel like that's an advantage for you when you're talking with players who might be in that situation now and in the future?
Yeah, I do. I think that's part of it is, you're selling development, right? And you're selling the young man's ability to develop and get better and be more prepared, I think, to be a professional player. I think that's one of the toughest things is, if I had signed out of high school, I wouldn't have, it'd been difficult, but it'd have been a heck of a chore. Who knows how long it would have lasted? Just because I don't know that at 18 years old, 17, 18, you have the handle that environment. It's really competitive. You're out on your own. And, there's so much that goes into it. Coming to college, obviously, is you just grow up. You travel with a team, and you play summer ball, and there's so many opportunities to mature and experience life. And that way, when you do get into pro ball, which you should. If you're getting drafted in the 26th round, you're pretty good chances you're gonna get better, right? You got to believe in yourself, and you got to trust yourself to get better. And you're gonna go from a 26th rounder to a 15th rounder to an 8th rounder, whatever it may be, and those opportunities will still be in front of you. Now you got to believe in yourself. I think a lot of times the young men that don't necessarily believe in themselves, they sign right now because they're like, hey, I'm doing it now. In my case, I knew that I was going to play professional baseball. I wasn't really worried about the round. I knew it was going to happen. So, I just believed in myself. That's what we preach to our kids when we get some of these guys to get drafted. It's like, hey, you got to trust us as a program to help you develop. But you also got to believe in yourself. You got to bet on yourself. You got to believe that you're going to come in this program and you're going to get better. Not just for Grand Canyon, but all the universities. There's so many. Going to college is such a it outweighs the positives, outweigh the negatives. I'm not trying to, I was in player development for a long time. I get it. I understand that. My professional baseball experience was amazing. And I believe in professional baseball, but I do know that the bottom line is you want to get to the big leagues, and what's going to help you prepare for the big leagues. And the issue there is the percentage of guys that get to the big leagues is very, very small, and so you got to be well rounded. You got to have other things in place in their lives to help them in case that I don't want to crush their dream. We're going to develop them. We're going to help our guys get ready to play pro ball someday, hopefully. But at the same time, we got to be realistic, right? And so, getting them young men to understand that, But I do think that my experiences and kind of what I've gone through, I do. To your question, I do think it helps.
Coach, what was it, in your opinion, that got you to the big leagues? I'm sure there were a lot of things that happened between when you got drafted and when you made your debut. There were 6 years in between there where you were kind of fighting through the minor leagues to make your way up. Was, between talent, perseverance, belief in yourself that you've already mentioned, if you could point to maybe one or two things that you really believe got you there in the first place, as someone who just, besides, I don't, I'm not, pretending that I watched you or scouted you in high school, but, with someone who maybe didn't have any tools besides the run tool that were totally off the charts, you not only got there, but you hung around for a long time. You had a pretty extended big league career. What do you think it was that got there, that got you there in the first place, if you could point to one or two things?
Well, I think that, number one, I was really passionate about the game. I didn't really have – I got my degree from Pepperdine, and so I think that kind of freed me up to know that, okay, that's there. But at the same time, I think you call it tunnel vision or whatever it may be. I put the blinders on and just said, I'm gonna play in the big league someday. Now, it took some time. It took 6 years to get there. Now there's a couple factors. I was, a guy like myself. I think you need some breaks, and one of the breaks I had was Buck Showalter. Buck Showalter was my manager for 6 of those minor league seasons. Buck Showalter was a manager in 3 of them. And so that's certainly, or 2 of them, sorry. And that certainly helps because now he's now a young manager in the big leagues. And so in 2 of those years we won rings. And so I was, playing second base and leading off. And so I think Buck obviously trusted me and knew that I could play baseball a little bit. And so I think that helped. A guy named Clete Boyer, who's no longer with us, is a great Yankee, old-time Yankee. He was one of our roving instructors, and Clete was in my corner. And so I had some Brian Butterfield, who's now the third base coach with the Anaheim Angels here in town, here in Tempe, during spring. So I was fortunate to have some guys that some sponsors, I guess, and that certainly helped. But I think, as much as anything else, I think I kind of learned my strengths as a player, and that's one thing that we try to get our guys to understand, kind of, who are you as a baseball player? And I knew that my ticket was I could run, and I could play defense, and I knew I had to really become a great defender because I wasn't going to hit 5'9", 165. I don't even know if I weighed that when I played. I wasn't going to hit bombs. I wasn't going to be this big run producer guy. Just I worked out like a son of a gun to try to get stronger, but it wasn't my game, and my game had to be. At that time, now nobody bunts, but fortunately back then, a player would be asked to bunt, and I would be asked to bunt and get a bunt down, move a runner over, pinch run, get a bag, and come in and play short, second or third, play really good defense. And so I think that's what enabled me to keep moving. And I was hitting in the minor leagues. I was hitting between 270 and 280, right around there. And so it wasn't like I was competitive at the plate. I just wasn't. I don't strike out much at all. I was a guy that was gonna foul balls off and just compete. And I know that today's game, and I don't even know if today's game the way they do it. I'm not even sure I would have gotten out of A-ball, quite honestly. And so I think I was fortunate to play at a time and era where my skill set, what I could do on a baseball field, people thought was important. People thought they could help them win games, and that's what gave me an opportunity to keep playing. But obviously, the game's changing a bit. So, but I think I guess tenacity, just keep grinding it out, keep working, and then understanding who I was. And I just felt like, hey man, if I got to play great defense. If a ground ball hit to me, I got to get them out. This is my ticket to stay here. And so I just really started concentrating on being the best defender I could be.
Do you think that that's something that lacks in the game today in youth baseball because there's so much emphasis put on showcase skills, which, for defense, it's arm strength more than it is glove work, because obviously to label someone a plus defender, you're going to have to see him play quite a bit. Even if someone's got really good hands, you can see that in a showcase setting, but sometimes you see them playing a game and they have a tendency to kick the routine ball more than you'd like them to. But that's something you kind of have to see a lot. But arm strength, obviously one pop of the glove, and you can see that. And I think that's where a lot of emphasis is for young players, is to develop their showcase skills. when you're going out and recruiting and when your coaches are recruiting, do you feel like defense, a really good defender, is becoming more of a rarity, or are there still a lot of those guys out there? Do you think enough kids realize, and enough coaches that are coaching these kids realize, that that's still a skill that really plays and it's going to have to be there for you to see time on the field? Or is that something that you feel like kids lack a little bit, and when they get into the program, you're having to teach them to really be, to use their tools, use their skills, their God-given abilities to be really good defenders at that level?
Yeah, I think that we've seen that kind of go away, and I think, but it's kind of cool to watch some of the stuff on social media that you see now, where defense, is growing. The emphasis on good glove work. Obviously, in catching has become a big deal, and obviously in the infield as well. And so, I think that's a huge positive. I think you're right though, that the showcase environment is just basically get in the cages and swing and let it rip, and the numbers, all the data, and it's some amazing stuff that we're seeing. But at the end of the day, what our pitchers, we got some guys that can run up there in the 90s, but for the most part, college pitching staffs are 88 to 90, 91, 92 with a good sinker and a good changeup, and they're going to get a lot of ground balls. And so if I'm going to recruit a pitcher that's going to sink the ball and throw down the zone, well, shame on me if I can't teach our infielders to play ground ball, or fill a ground ball behind them. And so that's an emphasis here in our program. And I know that a lot of ones that I've seen, I don't know, the East Coast as well, but the ones that I've seen here, on the West Coast, your Fullertons, your Irvine, Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, Sac State in our conference plays great defense. The ones that have really been able to secure the baseball, they and throw strikes, and they're pretty competitive. They on an everyday basis, and so I think that's kind of the model that we've been here in our program is to be a great defending team as best we can. We preach that pretty good. I tell guys all the time, you don't want to be that guy that I take out of a game in the 8th inning because we're up by 3 runs and now I'm worried about defense. You don't want to be that guy. You want to be the guy that you start a game, you want to finish the game. Because if I have to I'll take care of the game late if I feel like you can't play defense if we're leading. You get a little wiggle room because you can swing the bat, which is great, but if we're up, I'm more concerned with defense at that time anyways. So it's, they get it. They start to understand. I think there's going to be a little bit of a twist. And you can use big league. Watch the big leaguers. That's why it's hard to hit 300 in the big leagues, because the infielders are so good. Now with the shifts, it's even more difficult because they're just kind of putting a bunch of guys in one little area that everybody's hitting the ball. So it's now more difficult. But that's the one thing that I learned when I was coming up. It was like, man, big league infielders are so good now. When you're in the minors, you get a ball hard. That was a base hit. To the big leagues, you hit a ball hard, and the guy's throwing you out by 2 steps, and you're like, wow, it's a different game now. It speeds up. Everybody gets better.
I've thought that with, especially with guys that, if you're talking about 80, 70, 80, 100 years ago, which seems like a long time ago, but that's when, Ruth and like some of those big Yankees and Ted Williams and those guys were hitting. I mean, even just the quality of the gloves were different. Think about how much better the infields are groomed, and the hops that guys are getting when they get to the ball. There's a lot of things have changed, obviously, for all that stuff. For as far as batting averages go, and guys hitting 300, guys hitting 400, a lot of things have changed in that period of time. Coach, I want to ask you about just what you said about your own skill set, in today's game you might not have gotten out of single A because baseball doesn't value the things that you brought to the table at the time that you played as much. Baseball doesn't value that stuff as much now. And I like to ask this question from time to time on these podcasts because I think that people that coach youth baseball sometimes can get misinformation from Major League Baseball as far as what's important, right? So where you are, if you're talking to coaches of little league, middle school baseball, high school baseball, any level of travel baseball, those players are being groomed to play for you next, not necessarily to go straight to the major leagues. At the college level, and I'm not just in your program, but in programs that you play against, programs from all over the country that you've competed against, are the tools that maybe aren't as valued so much in the major leagues, are those tools still valued in college baseball? And I'm asking that to know and to hear from your mouth whether or not coaches of youth baseball should still be teaching those same type of skills, such as running the bases, the value of stolen bases, the value of defense, being able to hit the ball to all fields, not just being able to hit everything in the air to the pull side, hitting for a higher average, which in today's game in the major leagues is probably not as valued as much as it was in most of the rest of the history of baseball. Power is really valued in today's game more than anything else on the offensive side of things. But in your opinion, does the college game really reflect more of what baseball has historically valued? Again, those kind of tools that I've mentioned and the tools that played well for you and got you to the big leagues, do those tools still play and are valued in today's college game?
Yeah, Jeff, I believe so. I think that's a huge emphasis for us. Here's a question we get all the time, or I get, and I speak for myself, like, hey, coach, what are you looking for? Hey, you looking for shortstop, second, third, corner, infield, outfield? No, I'm just looking for baseball players, man. I just want guys that love the game, they understand the game, that are great teammates, that are passionate, got great energy, that just bring it every day. And so I'll give you an example. I saw Nick Madrigal, right? We all know who he is. Chicago White Sox is in the big leagues now. He's going to be a big leaguer for a long time. A little guy. And I coached him 18U team that went to La Paz and won a gold medal. And Nick's a great defender. He's a great base runner. But what he is a great baseball player. And I remember watching him as a runner on second base and had no outs. And as a staff, we're talking about, hey, no one, runner on second base, no outs. Just move the runner over, right? We're playing good baseball. We're gonna move him over, and then we're gonna get him in. And he did a push bunt. This is just in the trials. This is just to make the team. And a nice little push bunt, past the pitcher, and it turns into a base hit. So now we got first and third. No outs, and he steals a bag, and like, okay, that's a baseball player. I don't understand how that skill couldn't be valued or wouldn't be valued. I mean, ever. And so certainly in our game, in this college game that we're trying to teach, it has to be valued, Jeff, because I don't have a bunch of big hairy guys that are going to hit 20 homers in the season, right? Not many do. With this BB Core bat that we're using now, and it's not easy to do. I've got 3 or 4 typically nice hitters in the lineup, and then after that, I've got people. My pro friends are like, hey, why do you guys bunt? Because if I don't bunt him, the guy will probably pop up. I love him, but he's hitting a $1.88. In pro ball, you guys I coached pro ball, I managed pro ball, I did it for a long time. Everybody that plays in professional baseball, they're all the best of the best. They were the best high school player, they're the best college player. So I get it. Let them hit. But in our game, I have wonderful young men, but some of them are going to play professional baseball, but quite honestly, most of them are not. And so we need to put a offensive philosophy together that's going to help us produce runs. And so sometimes the best opportunity for us is to have a guy bunt, because like I said, if I don't bunt him, I know what the guy will do. He'll pop up or hit a double play. Why? Because I've seen it. I'm at practice every day. You're not, And so that's the part that I think sometimes we lose. Some people can lose on college baseball. Now, if I got a great 3-hole hitter, right? We had a kid named Chad De La Guerra here a couple of years ago. He was with the Red Sox. He's been in AAA for a couple of years. He's a great hitter. I said, Chad, if you ever see me give you the sack bunt sign, step out, because I didn't. You will not sack bunt. Now, he's my best hitter. Yes, he's not sacrifice bunting. But my 8, 9-hole hitter, who were combined batting average is 220. And then, I'm probably going to have them bunt because they don't handle the bat as well. And so that's the part that I think gets lost in the whole translation of the pro ball versus the college ball. It's just, I think as a manager, you got to know your skill set, know your team, right? And understand what's going to help you that player be as productive as a player as he can for the team, right? And so, but I value it. We worked on getting runners over. We at practice and in games, and we're on second base, we're having an inter squad, and we're gonna move a runner over. And if a guy pulls the ball down third baseline, then I know that either one of two things: either he can't move a runner over, or he's not trying. And I tell him either one's bad, fellas. It's not a good thing, right? So get blown up, get jammed, and move a runner over. And that's just the way that I believe that we have to do it at our level. Now, in the big leagues, yeah, if you got the runner second base, no outs, and you've got your 3, 4, and 5 hitter up, they're paid to drive in runs. Okay, I got it. Everybody drive them in. Everybody take a shot at driving them. But where we're at, I don't know that there's that many high school programs out there that have great a lineup 1 through 9 that are all hitting 400. So I think the manager or the head coach has got to figure out what's the best philosophy or strategy at that moment for his team.
And that's one area, Coach, where I believe that youth baseball doesn't do a very good job of developing guys for what's next, because the guy that's hitting 220 in your lineup is a freaking stud when he's 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. He's a stud. He's the best player on his team, but he might going to go to college, and maybe it's only as a freshman year. Maybe he gets to be a much better player later, but as a freshman he's playing and he's hitting 220, and sometimes he's going to be asked to move a runner or sack bunt. And if he hasn't done that a lot, if he hasn't learned to do that to where he's confident doing it, he's not going to be successful for you. And like you mentioned earlier, if he doesn't have these skill sets that you need him to have in these very specific situations, whether it's playing defense or whether it's moving a guy, he's going to come out of the game and somebody else is going to have a chance to do it.
That's correct. Yeah. No, I think you're right. And I think part of it is the youth baseball coaches, they're watching MLB stuff, and they're watching all these whoppers, and okay, I want to have a team of 9 guys that go up there and do that. But let's be realistic too. Let's just why not put your kid in a position where he does get a bunt down and he comes back in the dugout and he's excited and he feels good because everybody's giving him knuckles because he did his job. That has value, right? That has value to that young man's mind, and he feels good about himself. Now he goes out and plays defense. He makes some nice plays, and so that's a big component. Part of it too is telling that it's a team game. It's about the team, and unfortunately, in today's showcase mentality, it's show up, throw a couple innings, and then go down the line and go run, and then the game's over and fly back home, right? Or just come and get my hits, and I don't care whether we won or lost. Doesn't matter to me. I got my hits. I performed well. I think that's where we lose a little bit of team baseball as well. Is we're kind of breeding this baseball individualism in what we're providing for our young athletes, ball players, and so we kind of lose touch of hey man, what kind of do you love being around the team? Do you love being a team? Do you love being in the dugout? Are you how do you handle failure? Right, all of those things that we know we're going to fail in the game of baseball. We need to find guys that are really unselfish and and just want to be a part of a team more than anything else.
The unselfishness is, I'm glad you brought that part up, because I think that's a big part of coaching youth baseball as well. Is just, I think a big part of baseball in general is learning to be unselfish and put the team before yourself. And I think you have to put kids in positions to do those things for kids to be able to learn those lessons. Coach, I want to ask you just about, you talked about, I want to just go back a little bit. You talked about recruiting players and just recruiting great baseball players. People ask you, what are you looking for here? Are you looking for this tool, that tool, guys that play these positions? You say, no, I'm looking for great baseball players. And you gave some examples of what you mean by that. How do you gauge some of these things when you're out recruiting, or again, when you're kind of talking to the recruiters, the guys that do a lot of the recruiting on your coaching staff? How do you gauge things like passion, love of the game, a knowledge of the game, unselfishness that you want to see? Because a lot of times you're only seeing these kids play a couple of times before you're having to make a decision on them, sometimes because another school calls and says, hey, we want you, maybe you hear from the kid that, hey, such and such a school just offered me. I'm really interested in them, and you might have to kind of make a decision whether or not you're going to offer a kid right there, because if you don't, you might lose out on them. How do you gauge some of these things in the world of travel baseball where winning is not necessarily that important?
Well, it's hard, Jeff. It's probably one of the most difficult tasks, because we can, like you said, I can put a stopwatch on the kid running down the line, and he runs a 4.2 or 4.3 or 4.8, and so you can watch his arm across the diamond, so you can see those. The intangibles are tough because, like you said, and even tougher now because we're basically watching video, and you got all these young men that are committing to schools, that are, and they're just. They're freshmen, they're sophomores, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying that's just the way it's going, and so now it's even more difficult, right? To try to, and so you got to trust. You got to trust the coaches, the high school coaches. You got to trust the club coaches. You got to have a relationship. You got to build a relationship. You got to and make sure they know what's important to your program, what you're looking for. But when we can get out, you watch them in the dugout. You watch them. You watch them when on and off the field. Are they hustling on and off the field? Are they dragging? Or are they they strike out? Or they go in the corner, throw their bat, and they just sit in the corner by themselves? Or do they do they wear it like a man and get back up on the rail and still continue to be a good teammate? And so all of those things that you watch, right? You try to kind of, especially when you're locking in on a young man, you just try to find out, just get a feel for what he's about, what's important to him. And that's one of the toughest parts, I think, in recruiting, is because sometimes you get fooled, quite honestly. You get told one thing and you like the player and you want to believe what the coach told you, and so you recruit him, you bring him in, and then you find out, ooh, this guy's pretty selfish. This guy's all about himself. And so it's just, and then you try to say, this is what our program's about. This is what we're going to try to do here. So we want you to do. Are you going to buy in? Are you willing to buy in? And sometimes guys aren't, right? And hopefully most times guys are willing to jump on the train and do it right. But it's not easy. But you just try as best you can to call scouts, call people, call everybody you can to try to get as much information as you can.
And sometimes the kids change. I don't know if you've seen this, but I've definitely seen it with guys that I've recruited in the past. When they are the best player on the team and they are used to sort of being the guy, then it's easier for them to be a teammate. Then they get to college and they realize they're not the number one guy. As a freshman, they might be behind a guy or two at their position, and realizing that and dealing with not playing for the first time, and all of a sudden the player that has always been a good team player is now selfish because all we can think about is that he's not playing, and that can be difficult for guys as well. How do you go about having conversations with guys? I'm assuming you've had guys that have been in that position before. What conversation, coach, do you typically have? Because you've had so much experience from so many different levels of baseball as a player, as a coach. What kind of knowledge are you trying to bring to a kid that's in that situation? Let's call them kids here, because they are in a lot of positions. They're 18, 19 years old, in college for the first time, and maybe for the first time ever, they're not starting. They're not the guy. They're having to figure out what the heck to do. I'm on the bench. Like, what is going on here? What conversation are you having with guys who might be in that position for the first time?
Well, I think it's just being honest. I mean, I think it's and I tell them all the time in recruiting, really upfront with them and say, listen, I'm recruiting you, and you're on athletic scholarship, you're on aid, but that doesn't mean you play, and if you come on no money, that doesn't mean you don't play. It's just like, hey, here's one of the beauties of coaching college baseball versus being a professional manager, right? Is I get to put a lineup together, the one that I feel is the best one. Myself and our coaching staff sit down and we talk about our lineup and what's going to help us. Now in pro ball, it's a little bit different. I remember managing in pro ball, and I remember one time I took a prospect catcher out. I pinch hit for him when I was in Staten Island, and he was really struggling, and he was having a bad run, one of those bad slumps, one for like 25, 26, and so I pinch hit for him. And I got a phone call the next morning after I turned the report in on the night before, and my farm director said, "Hey, I see you pinch hit for so-and-so." I said, "Yeah, man, he's scuffling." He goes, that's fine, just don't ever do it again." It's like, okay. I'm like, all right. He needed a blow. He needed a blow in a bad way. He needed 2 days off is what he needed. But it didn't matter. Right? I get it. He's a prospect. In that environment, it's about player development. It's about you play those kids, right? And so here, I don't have to play. I tell guys all the time, hey man, whoever plays out there deserves to play. That's it. I don't care if you're on a big scholarship, no scholarship. If you deserve to play, you'll play. And so I think that's part of the discussion to start out with. Is like, my freshman year at Pepperdine, I played left field. And I share with these guys all the time, like, hey, I was one of the best middle infielders in the state of California. And in my freshman year, I played left field. So stop it if you think that you're going to come in here and hey, I'm going to be the starting shortstop. I said, well, you may be, but you may not be. That's up to you guys. You go on the field and prove. Just you guys go prove who just needs to be playing shortstop or second or third, whatever it may be. And I think creating versatility too is a good thing. And so you say, hey man, I've got a couple older kids here that have proven that they're a nice player at this position. Then okay, we're going to put you at a different position for right now, right? And then when he graduates or signs, then you move into that spot. Right, and so I think all those conversations need to take place as well, and I think you just got to communicate with them, and if you find out really quickly, who's okay with it. Most of our guys are. I think most college coaches would tell you most of their players get it. They understand their role and just want to be a part of it. They know their time will come. And so, yeah. At the end of the day, we're going to play whoever we feel is going to deserves to be on the field, and so I think you just got to have an open conversation about it with them. I think they understand it pretty well.
So a guy that played middle infield in the big leagues for 7 years, played left field as a freshman at college. Who in the world played middle infield for Pepperdine that year?
Well, there was seniors, right? There was how infield was all seniors, right? It was senior third, senior short, senior second, senior first, and so I got it. I was like, okay. And I remember a coach said to me, hey, we played the outfield. And in high school, I did my sophomore year in high school at St. Paul for the same reason. Shortstop, second baseman were both seniors, and coach wanted to get me in the lineup. And so I played out in left field. And so then I got to Pepperdine, and coach says, hey, you ever played left field? I said, yeah, I played it in high school a little bit. I'm good. Let's go. No worries. Right? And so I didn't care. It didn't matter. I mean, it didn't. I think everybody wants to be the shortstop or the center fielder. Well, guess what? There's only two of them on the field, and maybe you're not good enough right now. Maybe you'll never be good enough, But come on in here, and we'll train you and help you become the best infielder you can become. But there's other guys that are coming too, and so that's called competition, man. That's called life, right? That's part of our job here too, is to help these guys grow up, help them understand how life works. This is how it is, man. You don't go to your boss at UPS and ask them for a bonus if you haven't done your work, right? Hey, I tell guys all the time, you got to work, man. You got to. Everything you get has to be earned. There's no free rides in life. So part of our job is to train you that this is no free ride here either. I don't care if you're on scholarship. I've had plenty of guys that we get on a bus and they're on 70% scholarship, and for 3 straight weekends they're on a bus. And a lot of guys that took their job are guys that are no money. Well, that's their fault. That's not my fault. That's up to them. You want to be a travel guy, you want to be an everyday player, then you gotta earn it, man. And so that's just the way that we've got to go about it. And I think the guys at the time, that might frustrate them, but I think though once they graduate and leave, they understand when they get out in the real world, right? And they got to make money for their families and want to buy a home, all that real world stuff. Well, then they realize that they got to be the best salesman, right? And they got to be the best at what they're doing. They got a boss that they got to show that they're the best, and they deserve So that's kind of been our approach.
That's awesome. You got me fired up right now. Just from hearing that, and there's just so much of that is true, and it's not easy to hear sometimes when you're on the receiving end of those things. And the moving positions thing is a really interesting conversation that I think a lot of baseball players have to have at some point in their positions, or at some point in their careers, whether it's, you first get somewhere, whether it's college or a certain level of the minor leagues or a high school team or whatever, and there are already people that are pretty good in your position. You might be a little bit better than them, but while they're there, they're going to stay there, and you're going to play somewhere else, and you've got to be okay with that. Or whether it's later in your career and somebody's better than you, but you still have a chance to stay in the lineup, you might have to move somewhere else, but you still have a chance to play. I just think there's a lot of a great wisdom there coming from a guy who's been in a lot of different places. Coach, one last question I want to ask you, if you have time, before I let you go. Do you have time for one more question?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, I just want to ask, you're such a passionate guy about so many things, and you've had an opportunity to do a lot of different things. After your playing career, you were a minor league manager, you were a scout, then you went to try it out in college as an assistant coach, then you went back to be a minor league coordinator, then back to being a college coach. Can I just ask you what ultimately landed you in the college game, why you've now stayed in the college game as opposed to staying in the pro game? I'm curious as to why this is the route you decided to take as a coach.
Great question, Jeff. I think at the end of the day, man, I love what I do because of the players, because of the students. Obviously, I'm at a great university that's growing, and got great administration here that has really helped us grow our program and every athletic program here. So a lot of huge pluses here at GCU. But the biggest is the student athletes. In pro ball, I love pro ball. And pro ball is about player development, right? It's just about, hey, we're going to develop these guys to get better, right? Hopefully make it to the big leagues, or get so good that we can trade them to get the big league player that we need to win a World Series. And so that, I get that. So you're around those young men, and then they're traded, or they're released, or they're sent up, they're called down, and there's a lot of moving parts. Here, if I get a young man as a freshman, hopefully I got 3-4 years with them. Right, and so I think it's a great environment to invest in them and help them grow and graduate. And alumni game is one of my favorite days because everybody comes back, and I get to see everybody, and they're men now, and some of them now married and have children, and that's cool, man. It's just it's a great environment to be in. It really is. I'm the luckiest man in the world, man. I'm blessed. I get to come here in my office. I get to look out the window, and I see batting cages, and I see a turf half field, and then I see a stadium. I mean, come on, it can't get any better, right? And so, I get to do something pretty cool, and the school is actually paying me to do it, man. I can't believe it. So, so it's all good. I love professional baseball. I love watching a lot of my friends that are coaching now and managing now. Torey Lavello, the manager of the Diamondbacks, we played together. And so I love talking to him. I love what they're doing. Mike Fetters was my teammate at Pepperdine. He's now the bullpen coach over there with the Diamondbacks. And so we keep in touch. And I love the game, all parts of it. You just feel like the college game is just kind of hit home with me. And I'm having time of my life.
What an awesome perspective, and I just appreciate everything that you share with us today. This is Andy Stankiewicz. He's currently the head coach at Grand Canyon University Division I school in Arizona. Former big leaguer. He's done a lot of great things in his career and so much wisdom to share with us. There are a lot of areas we didn't even get into today, so Coach, maybe we can talk about having you on again at some point in the future, but this was tremendously enjoyable for me. I want to thank you personally for the time and all the wisdom that you shared with us, and just to certainly appreciate you taking time to be on this podcast with us today.
Well, Jeff, thank you, and I want to thank you for what you're doing, figuring out baseball. It's funny. I love the three of those words, figured. I tell you guys all the time, but my three favorite words are figured out. Like when I'm struggling with them, I'm like, hey, man, just figure it out. Will you? Just figure it out. right? And so it's all good, man. But I love what you're doing. I'm sure the baseball community does as well. And so and I got your website. I see you got a lot of good videos there. I'm gonna jump on. I jump on them all the time to see if I can. This old dog can learn some new tricks. And so I'm right there with you, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach. Good luck to you.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.